to explain to you the Halo lore.
Okay, explain it. Don't miss a beat.
Okay, so there's this ancient race of pre-nescent beings called the Precursors, and they create the Milky Way galaxy and all life within it. And they use the species called Forerunners as their custodes to help them take care. They decide that they are done creating and want to pass down their mantle of responsibility, which is the title granted to those who take care of all life in the galaxy. They decide they want to hand that down to one of their creations, humanity. The Forerunners hear about this, and they decide to kill all their masters known as the Precursors. Thousands of years pass, and the Precursors are forgotten, and the Forerunners take up the mantle. The Forerunners are bad inheritors of the mantle. They bully other species into submission and only let themselves be on top.
Hey, when are we going to bring up that they killed Elon Musk in Halo 4 trailer?
He'll get there, I'm sure.
Anyways, so humanity isn't too bad off, although either. They're actually pretty similar to the Forerunners at this point. See, ancient humanity at some point fought the Forerunners, and they lost. But the fact is, they were not fighting the Forerunners intentionally. They were running. They were running from a species known as a flood, a parasite. See, the flood is actually what's left of the Precursors, coming to damn the galaxy to eternal stagnation. Okay, are you following this?
So far.
All right, so what they decide to reduce the humans back to a primal state, to a tier 6 civilization. They're back in the Stone Age now. So basically, the Forerunners find out about the flood, and they decide to create the Halo Array, okay, as a last resort against the flood, okay? And when the flood does come back, it returns in force. And this time, it fights the Forerunners. The Forerunners do okay at first, but then they start to lose and lose and lose and lose. And then they eventually create this robot, which is AI technically, but it is a technical term, but we're going to call it a robot. The robot's name is Mendicant Bias. See, Mendicant Bias is tasked with communicating with an ancient entity known as a primordial. In fact, the primordial is actually a precursor / gravemind, the gravemind being the compound intelligence of the flood. See, and primordial uses manipulation and the logic plague, which is like a diseased version of the flood, except digital, to influence Mendicant Bias to turn against his creators. Mendicant Bias attacks the capital, fails, is disassembled, distributed out to that galaxy, but as the flood advances towards the Forerunners, it eventually rebuilds Mendicant Bias. The Forerunners then build another AI known as Offensive Bias, and then, but Offensive Bias lacks the free will that Mendicant Bias has. Anyways, there's a big battle around the Ark. The Ark is what created the Halo Array, by the way. And the Halo Array fires, eliminating all sentient life in the galaxy, with the exception of a few Forerunners at the Ark, and the Endless, which we'll get to later. But you see, basically, the galaxy is now completely devoid of any life large enough to sustain the flood. Now, it's at this point that the Forerunners leave the galaxy and decide to pass the mantle to humanity as it was originally required. Okay? Now, we haven't gotten to the games yet. This is all covered in novels. Okay? So that many thousands of years pass, the monitors of the Halo installations monitor their installations, not much happens. Until finally, humanity starts to spread out amongst the stars and colonize in the late 2330s, 233, you know what I mean. And then, eventually, citizens of the planet Harvest eventually see a giant egg in the sky. You see, this giant egg is actually part of the Covenant fleet. It's a missionary ship called Minor Transgression. And you see, this is the first contact scenario. It doesn't end too well. Basically, everyone dies on Harvest, except for Sergeant Johnson, the coolest guy in Halo. Now, let's go back a little bit even further, because this coincides with the creation of the Spartan program. Now, the Spartan program was based off of the Orion program. You see, the Orion program was only a predecessor to the Spartan program. I know that makes no sense. You just have to think about it. Anyway, Dr. Halsey kidnaps some kids and makes them super buff and tough, and puts them in power armor. You see, and then they were originally made to fight insurrectionists, but they start fighting the Covenant instead. And then the Covenant starts to destroy humanity, and they glass their world. You see, they just fire down a beam of energy, and it just turns the entire surface of the world to glass. Next up, we have, this is where the games begin, Halo Reach. All right. Noble team is sent to investigate a disturbance on the frontier at Visegrad Relay. And at Visegrad Relay, they suspect it's just insurrections. No, it's the Covenant. And the fact that the Covenant are on Reach is awful. That means that Reach will almost certainly fall. But the thing is, they need Reach not to fall so it can be a sort of bastion for humanity. But Reach falls anyway. And so Master Chief runs away with Captain Keyes on the Pillar of Autumn, and then they find a ring, a really big Halo ring. One of the Halo rings I mentioned earlier. They eventually destroy this ring, and you can just play Halo CE if you want to know more. And then they go back to Earth through a series of cataclysmic events. I'm almost done. I'm almost to Halo 2. So, and at this point at Earth, the commander of the Covenant fleet that followed the Pillar of Autumn to the Halo is now sentenced to be the arbiter for his failure to save the ring, I suppose. Arbiter is then forced to go on a mission to silence some heretics at a gas line on the planet Threshold.
We did something, guys. We didn't press the button.
And you see, he silences the heretics on the planet of Threshold, but realizes that the Covenant, the prophets, the leader of the Covenant, are lying about something. And you see, meanwhile, the Covenant discovers Earth, the single last world of humanity. And Master Chief is, at this point, he's not technically the last Spartan, but he is the last Spartan we know of at that time. He is the only one Spartan left at that point. Now he has to defend Earth, the only planet left on the whole UNSC, United Nations Space Command, which is just like humanity, And so, eventually, the Covenant fleet doesn't even know humans are on Earth, and they stumble there looking for something else, called the Ark. And I'll get back to the Ark in a second. If you remember what it was, it made the Halo installations. Now, the Prophet of Regret, coming to Earth, realizes it was a mistake, and so he leaves to another Halo installation called Installation 05. The previous installation was called Installation 04. That was the one Master Chief blew up. Now, on Installation 05, the Flood is released, and they take over the Covenant homeworld of High Charity. It's not really a homeworld, it's a giant floating asteroid called High Charity.
I'm gonna beat you.
I think I better stop.
Keep going.
Okay.
Go to the end of the timeline.
I'll go all the way to infinite. Okay.
How long will that take exactly?
Maybe like 5 more minutes.
Okay. Keep going.
Okay.
You're almost there.
Now at this point, High Charity has been taken over by the Flood. Okay, and Master Chief leaves behind Cortana, his AI sidekick, on High Charity. Okay. She promises to blow up High Charity in case the Flood gets loose. But she has to deal with the Gravemind, who is also there. Yeah, the Flood made another Gravemind, by the way. And so, Master Chief goes back to Earth aboard the Prophet of Truth's Dreadnought, Forerunner Dreadnought. There's a whole bunch of lore behind that I won't explain now. But he eventually jumps off for some reason when he gets to Earth and hits the ground really hard, but doesn't die for some reason. And then he's found by Sergeant Johnson. They go back to the human base. They try and destroy the Covenant one last time before they die. But the Covenant opened the portal to the Ark, the place where Halo rings were made. So, and the Flood then comes through the portal. They were originally being quarantined around the area of Installation 05, but the Flood comes through, gets through the quarantine area, and infests a little bit of Earth. But luckily, we managed to stop them by glassing half of Africa. Okay, it's not that bad, trust me. It's just hyperbole. Anyways. Meanwhile, at the Ark, the Covenant remnants, the Sangheili, have actually been cast out of the Covenant because they failed to protect the Prophet of Truth from Master Chief. So the Sangheili, the elites, are allied with humanity now because they have a common purpose in defeating the Greater Covenant. And then they defeat the Greater Covenant. The Flood comes to the Ark to try to stop them. They defeat the Covenant. The Flood betrays them because they allied with them when they tried to kill the Prophet of Truth. They succeeded in killing the Prophet of Truth. The Flood betrays them, and then they go to a new Halo ring that was being constructed for the one that Master Chief blew up. See, they fire this Halo ring, and then they also retrieve Cortana. Then they fire the Halo ring, and then they get off, but only Arbiter makes it through the portal. Master Chief is left behind floating in a spaceship. Now, 7 years later, humanity is at the top of its game again, we're powerful and all. The Master Chief lands on a planet known as Requiem. and it's there that a forerunner known as the Didact, the Didact, is there, and Master Chief accidentally awakens him trying to contact the UNSC, and so Master Chief tries to chase after the Didact. The Didact decides to just go, glass Arizona because Arizona, and then and Master Chief stops him, but he loses Cortana in the process. Now after that, Cortana actually survives, and she accesses this information spanning the galaxy known as the Domain. It's like a giant website for the Foreigners, but the Foreigners left it behind when they left the galaxy about 100,000 years earlier. And so Cortana accesses the Domain, finds out it makes her immortal, and then she awakens some Foreigner constructs known as Guardians. And keep in mind, this is the worst part of the series. And so she awakens the Guardians and sends them out across different planets. Master Chief tries to stop her. There's some stuff about a Spartan lock. Don't worry about him. He's not important. But Master Chief fails.
It's right there. Oh.
The Master Chief eventually goes on the run with the rest of the UNSC. He ends up at Zeta Halo. He fights the Banished, and he unwittingly, Banished, which were an ex-group of Covenant, and then he releases an unknown enemy known as the Endless, and that's it.
That's the entire lore?
That's the basis of it. There's much more.
We're going to win so much. We're going to win at every level.
We're going to win so much, you may even get tired of winning.
And you'll say, please, please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore. Mr. President, it's too much.
And I'll say, no, it isn't. We have to keep winning. We have to win more. We're going to win more.
There's much more.
Okay. All right. I guess for the uninitiated, they now know the basic Halo lore in 12 minutes and 45 seconds.
Not really a homeworld. It's a giant floating asteroid.